Thank you, everyone, for listening to Soul Talk with host Jeremy McDonald, the author of Peace Be Still. You can check out more about our shows or about Jeremy at soultalkradio.org and jeremymcdonald.net. And now for our show.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for listening to Soul Talk. We have an amazing guest who's been on the show a couple years ago and has been on other shows that I'm a host of as well. Please welcome everybody that's listening our great guest, Laura Eisenhower. Let me tell you just a little bit about her. That most of you know a lot about her as well, but I just want to give just a brief description. She's through natural alchemy and sacred union and living in the entire mythological body of the goddess. Laura is powerfully creating global transformation on the Venus path, and I'm not going to go into her whole description here, but I just want to do a quote here that she says on her website. Through embracing the divinity of the earth and surrendering to the will of nature, the heart of truth and unconditional love can be found. If we dissolve the barriers that separate us from each other and the source and activate our higher minds in the work we do to create change, our actions will create ascension and shift us into a magical, enlightened, and liberated existence. Wow, that's a good quote. Thank you, and welcome to the show, Laura. How are you?
I'm great. How are you, Jeremy? Thanks for having me.
I'm having a great time. It's finally warming up. Of course, we got down to the 30s, which people yell at me for talking about in Florida, but 30s is pretty cold for us during the summer, at least during the winter time. It's finally starting to warm up.
Yeah, that is cold. I'm used to California, and that would, I hear you.
So that is actually a really powerful statement there, and it's something that I know a lot of us are out there working towards, is that when we break down and dissolve the barriers that separate us, and really I think what you're trying to say is that we start working on ourselves and work with other people, then we're going to really start liberating this planet. And so I think that kind of sums up your entire work, doesn't it? In that
yeah,
range.
Definitely. I mean, I really am into helping people to understand the nature of this planetary body and, what it's made of and the history connected to how it formed in the way that it is. We were used to be in these higher, more advanced civilizations, and, now it's like everybody calls this, 3D Earth, but in actual fact, the Earth is seeded with a 13-dimensional core, and it's got great potential. It's an ascension planet. And so when we embrace this and we trust nature a little bit more, and we kind of get out of the way of ourselves a little bit, and, work on ourselves and move out of like the programmings, we naturally dissolve the barriers because the programmings create the barriers, a lot of the negative ego stuff, that we're taught, that's rewarded, things about competition and, things about status and just, judgments that people hold and just, the wars that we've all gone through and the resentments that might historically be held against each other. It's like, the more we do the inner work, the more we recognize, something within us that is a lot more loving and a lot more compassionate. And we also start to wake up to the game that's being played because, usually when we do inner work, we tend to attract, a lot about the lies and deceptions that are out there. The two kind of go hand in hand. So, I think that's, how we shift the planet is to allow that energy to flow through us. But, it also means that we need to look at ourselves and, what we're operating from. Is it authentic? Is it really us? Or is it, something we're, born into? Is it an ancestral pattern? Is it a programming? Is it something we picked up on along the way? And, and just simply doing that, I've noticed, makes all the difference in the world. And so, that's what I like to share and talk about.
Absolutely. It's funny because they think a lot of people are getting in our community are getting pushed in this direction. I know probably about maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I just really felt like I needed to bring just here in my local area the spiritual community together, and those that refer to themselves as whatever spiritualist, New Age, whatever. And I just kind of went out and tried to start slowly but surely getting them to start talking to each other, because it seemed like everybody was just doing their own thing, and helping and healing, and that's very wonderful. And I found that at this time, we tried this like 10 years ago, my mother and I, and it didn't necessarily work. Now I'm finding that people are starting to get more, they're wanting to get out more in their community. They're wanting to connect. They're wanting to co-create with people. They're wanting to share and be a part of something, at least on a different level than they were 10 years ago. 10 years ago, they were not in that place. So I'm finding, are you finding that things are really shifting, at least at that level across the planet? Because I'm kind of feeling that on some levels.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've had people very closed off to my information 5 years ago that now are, a lot more present in my life, and even, have apologized for their reaction to me when I first, started to share. So, I mean, I think, people, have been, at different phases of the journey, and because so many people have gotten over the initial hump of some of the shock of what's going on, I mean, it's like it's starting to spread. I mean, it's kind of like a truth epidemic. And, sometimes people need more numbers to validate, what somebody might be sharing. They need to know that, okay, a lot of people are open to this. Okay, so maybe I need to be open. When the numbers are small, it's sort of like, oh, that's just, very alternative or very, like this fringe group, or just, these are just, the conspiracy theorists. But as, the numbers grow, I think it just invites more of the masses in to say, okay, well, something's happening here, and I don't want to miss out on this, and I don't want to be fully asleep, and things are weird in the news, and, something really doesn't feel right. And, as we're in this window period and people can feel the energies, increase, that pushes us either further into an artificial timeline or introduces us to, the organic ascension timeline. I think that's when the spirit says, okay, this is, a wake-up call. I'm crying out. You need to start to really pay attention. It's kind of like, if we were in the wilderness and we needed to survive, our survival instinct kicks in and protects us and saves us. And so I think people, in the past were able to get away with, being more unconscious, but now it's like, we're reaching a critical point where, the choices we're making are really determining, where our future is going to take us, or what lies, ahead of us in our future. And I think, the spiritual part of who we are and the deeper truth of who we are, recognizes, the conscious mind is starting to recognize that part of who we are more, because the necessity is such. And I don't think anybody wants to be enslaved, and I think there's that internal protection mechanism that jumps in and starts to make the right choices. And I think a lot of it has to do with the times we're in, because we are in the stellar activation cycle that's peaking right now. And it also, just has to do with just how love and unity spreads. And, yeah, and so I think, a lot more people are on board because, deep down we know that we don't have any choice to be on board. And then when we start to recognize that it's a path of liberation, and it's not just about, adopting the conspiracy belief system into our world, I think people really recognize that, it's not about just adopting a new belief system. It's about, having discernment and having a free mind and, connecting with love. And, we can sort out the information whatever way we want, but let's all be a part of the conversation at least. Because, sometimes, people push the conspiracy stuff, but it's the same sort of model of, having, religious or government control pushed on us. So I think, the more we allow people to, move into this and find their way, and the more people realize that that's what it's really about, the more joy can come from it. And that's at least my intention, as somebody that shares information. My biggest focus is to empower people and to encourage free thinking, but to give them something to think about. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Well, I think that's actually what drew me to your presentation the first time I saw you, and I cannot remember the presentation. It was I don't know. I just remember that you were telling the truth, and I've learned that they're not necessarily conspiracies; they're the truth. And we want to kind of, to me, I'm thinking we need to rephrase it. You know, you were telling the truth about what was going on in the world, but you also said something really important to me that I'd been teaching people for a long time, and you said, we are divine, and we are gods and goddesses, and you have that spark in you, and I thought, finally somebody's saying it. And maybe I just never saw it before. It never resonated with me, but I thought, she's not just talking about things that make us, you know, wake up a little bit inside and look and say, hey, my world is not, you know, people are lying to me, but she's also saying you're empowered and you can change it by changing yourself. And that's actually where you bring up a really good point, because I had studied a lot of that stuff for years and years and years and years, and then I started realizing, well, what if I just empowered myself and empowered people? Then they'd wake up to this stuff in the first place. And but I found as I was kind of drawing away from that and going into a different direction, that people were still kind of trying to push the truth stuff down, or the conspiracy stuff down me. And I thought, I'm like, I know that stuff's going on, and I still watch it and pay attention to it. I just feel like empowering people is the most. If I can teach people to get inside of themselves and find out who they are, to me that's the most important part. And and especially for myself. So, and I felt that's what you were doing when I first saw you present, and that's why I resonated with your message. So.
Oh, well, that's great. Yeah, because to me it's not, you know, about me as a speaker. It's about me playing a role as a reminder, as, you know, somebody that, you know, can help activate, you know, what's already within. Because, you know, once we start to get in touch with that, like you said, you know, everything else starts to unfold and fall into place. But if we don't feel empowered and we're just taking in conspiracy stuff, it can keep us locked into fear and anxiety and, you know, a sense of, what the hell am I going to do with this? You know, like, how are we going to navigate through this stuff? And, you know, and we have to understand this awakening process isn't just, you know, waking up to the fact that, you know, all this horrible stuff is going on. It's waking up, you know, our DNA potential, our divine blueprint, you know, what we can do to advance ourselves in this human vessel to be able to cope with all these assaults and to rise above it. And, so, I mean, finding a balance between the two, you know, is important, but certainly my priority is definitely, to kind of, you know, get the vessel ready, get the consciousness ready, kind of like, you know, giving somebody a massage and warming it up first before you go into deep tissue. It's like, let's, you know, like, you know, warm up the muscles and create, you know, a good space to then really get in there and, you know, deconstruct and you know, take down the old and rebuild the new, you know. But we're not really going to be able to do that or unify if we're still carrying programmings, or if we don't know who we are. We're actually just bringing that same contamination into the new paradigm, and we actually can't make it into the new paradigm, you know, if we're still holding on to all of that. So, you know, we have to be, you know, on a certain level. It doesn't mean we have to, you know, be completely empowered and completely know who we are, but at least transparent enough to know to reach out for help and to get readings and to get support and assistance, you know, so that we can, you know, move in that direction and not feel shame or unworthiness because we don't feel ready, but to feel proud of ourselves to, you know, for being able to admit it and, you know, and do the necessary work. You know, that's a huge validation of strength instead of weakness. You know, to change our lifestyles and change our diet and, you know, get readings if we need to, you know, understand, you know, all these different things about us instead of pretend it doesn't exist and hide it, because that's the old paradigm of, you know, appearances and status and, you know, covering all this secrecy up. And, you know, that's what we've been taught and that's what we've been shown. And now it's like, you know, let's be more transparent, let's be more vulnerable, you know, but let's be compassionate with each other too. And, you know, and so, you know, if we're not working with the right people, sometimes it can make things even worse, you know, especially if we're vulnerable and we're not being treated correctly. And so, you know, the leaders and the teachers need to heal. The people that, you know, resonate with all of it, you know, are responding, and then they're, you know, becoming teachers and leaders. And everybody's got to look at themselves. Nobody is, you know, free of needing to stay in that focus of energy maintenance. You know, I always look at myself. I'm always shuffling cards on myself. I take my role very seriously, and I don't want to, you know, ever, you know, misguide anybody. I just and so I'm right there with everybody. I'm reminding everybody, but I'm right there with everybody as well. And there's a necessity for these particular roles right now, but soon it's going to even out, and we're all going to be like, just really like, maybe doing this more in, our communities and with our friends and our loved ones, taking on more of a leadership role. But, it takes a little bit of preparation.
Absolutely. You bring up a pretty good point about levels and stuff like that, and I was just thinking about something because you've been posting, quite a bit about Hillary Clinton lately, and it just made me realize that she's a part of an elitist class, that at least that she's created, that those people have created in our country or in our world, and I think it's very interesting that because I do a radio show, people will say to me, they won't want to message me or talk to me, and I'm like, well, why not? And they think, well, I just think you're probably too busy. And I've had people say, because I don't have a problem with emailing somebody and asking them to be on the show. And I finally just, I've started telling people, listen, these people are people just like us, and they're souls. They have the lessons just like us. And that's the old paradigm. The old paradigm is to not approach somebody that's a person that has a good conversation, you can connect with on an energetic level, soulful level. And and I'm just thinking about that elitist class that's very untouchable, because they make themselves that way. And what a lonely world that probably, maybe that could be a very lonely world where they're at. I don't know. I think that we're building something different, where you can talk to anybody and be connected with them and connect heart to heart with them. And I feel that's what we're doing in our communities across the country, is really just connecting and talking with people. What do you think is happening?
Yeah.
Because I'm feeling like that's really strong for me. And I'm like so far removed from, I haven't voted since like the 90s, actually since 2000, because of I just realized that we don't have a say in our own country as far as that goes, other than being who we are, empowered and speaking our truth. So do you think this heart energy, do you feel this heart energy is really shifting that? And I actually feel like people are looking at that world less and less, and they're starting to look, like, because people that I'm talking to are getting really upset about the current system. And I'm like, well, that's because it's going to fall apart. And, that's an old world that's slowly but surely trying to fight to stay alive.
It's a world of negative ego, and we have to realize it's very cut off. It deceives us. It makes a lot of promises it can't keep. It doesn't look at the priorities. I mean, there's still starving people in this world. There's still weather modification happening. Our skies are still being sprayed, and so why are we still voting these people into office? None of these issues have ever been addressed, particularly about all the injustices on the planet. There's no excuse for people who are hungry to not have food. And anybody in a leadership position or anybody who is sitting on an incredible amount of wealth that they get from our tax dollars or the work that we do that has turned them into billionaires, if they can't feed the hungry with that money, then I just don't get it, And so when I talk about Hillary Clinton, I'm not talking about it politically because I'm not political. I can't really wrap my head around it. I mean, I'm an activist. I guess that's political. And I advocate for, things that don't have a voice. But, I haven't voted either. And it's just a system that is so incredibly corrupt. It's vampiric. It's, a part of, an agenda that's been in the works for a really long time. And there's so much behind the scenes going on to establish, their powers. And it's basically, based on manipulation and siphoning our energies and using us. That's how they have power. And, people enable it. And so, people have to understand that if you're enabling it, then you might be stuck in your own negative ego, or you might be stuck in such a high degree of unconsciousness that you don't think that there's anything else outside of this reality, and that this is just what it means to be human, and that this is just the way it's set up, and we don't have any, other choices beyond, government and voting whoever is running, picking the best one out of two that we might not even like. And this is, the importance of right now. The heart is the leader. Gaia and nature and just, the things going on in the cosmos and the different alignments that are happening that are initiating us into, greater awareness, upgraded DNA, greater expansion, and greater ability to, really work with our creative imagination. I mean, all this is organically happening, and we're getting a lot of assistance, just with, these forces, because this is what nature does. This planet is seeded as an ascension planet, which means that it reaches a point of being ready to blossom, just like a seed of a flower, and just like a child, who's born, who is going to unravel, into adulthood and, do what they feel called to do in the world. It's a potential that we've been waiting on, and now we're here. And there's been this whole other thing operating, to, replace it, to imitate it, but to turn it into enslavement, where instead of blossoming, we get, encased in this matrix, and it's very difficult to leave once, we allow this to persist once we sort of know better, I mean, if Hillary is running for president and wins, and we don't do something to really awaken the masses before all this happens, a lot of souls are going to be compromised. So, we're doing the best we can, but I think, people are realizing that there is no heart in those, structures or in that sort of leadership. And true leadership, has nothing to do with, putting somebody on a pedestal or creating this us and them, or this sort of dependency where the leaders are going to do everything for us, particularly these type of leaders that do everything that actually harms us. The true leaders, are leaders of the heart, which invite people to join in the unity consciousness, which means that, one is, only a leader by example, not by being in a position of I'm better than you, but saying, hey, I'm going to take the initiative. I see the importance of unity and that we're all one and we're all connected, but it's more about diversity and harmony, not about us all being the same, and it's more about an invitation to, enjoy that and to embrace that and to, show up as the best, person you can be, and as authentic and as true to yourself as you can be, because we're all leaders in our own worlds. You being yourself and me being myself is taking on a leadership role in my life instead of being what somebody else wants me to be. So I don't see any difference in what I'm doing as a speaker. I'm just, saying that, hey, this is what I've decided to do, and I hope everybody will join me, and then we can all look to each other and embrace the fact that we are now in a unified field, and we are now, stepping out of duality, and we can now create, organically with nature and with the divine plan. Maybe it's not like a plan that, has been all mapped out, but it's based on, the plan is that when something needs restoration, it'll be restored. It'll regenerate. That's what nature does. That's what our immune system does. And it's really working with the forces that are available to us to restore our creation back to balance and back to wholeness. And then we notice that time is not linear, and we're just breathing in the oneness of, an embodied existence where, timelines don't even matter because there's no future or past. It's all embodied in the now. And then we recognize that we're, powerful creators, and but we need to co-create with nature, and we need to stay strong in our integrity, but it's not like, when we co-create, one has the upper hand over the other. It's a communication. It's a relationship. So when, maybe we need the sun to shine, maybe nature will grant us that miracle. And maybe, when, maybe it won't, and we need to adjust ourselves, we're adaptable enough and flexible enough to the storms that come our way, but it's a relationship, and it's a bit of give and take.
Absolutely. Well, and then we all play these, right now, these roles that we call them. And if I found that if you're operating in your heart and you're doing something that really resonates with you and really makes you feel good about yourself and really, you enjoy, you're passionate about, then you're usually in alignment with what needs to be done for you. You're the leader in your life. And, of course, that resonates onto the world, and that empowers other people to do the same thing. And so... Exactly. And so, I mean, if we would all just... There's some program that tells us that we have to be a certain way. And for example, me, I've always been banking in corporate America. But the underlying part of me loved inspiring people, loved creativity, loved art, loved the things and connecting with people. And so I was out doing all the wrong things for all the wrong reasons, but that's a good majority of people in America. And so I saw something today that said it can't be possible that we come down here to work to pay bills. That doesn't seem at all why God or Goddess put us here. You know, and so I thought, well, that's exactly right. Why? There's no purpose for us to come down here to just pay bills. There's no.
Yeah,
we want to live in
or to answer to something else, or to compromise what it means to be ourselves, and to not work with nature or in harmony with nature. I mean, nature is being mistreated so incredibly much. So we're paying bills to support the poisoning of our resources and our beautiful Mother Earth, and the exploitation of it. And, you know, I mean, none of it makes sense. And it is, you know, a very powerful programming. And, just, you know, allowing ourselves to be ourselves is the greatest gift, you know, we can give, you know, to this world. And, you know, everything about what our physical body is trying to tell us is what keeps us on track. You know, that's why we get sick. You know, people think, you know, if you get symptoms or you know, especially if they're, you know, really heavy-duty symptoms, that you have a disease and you have an affliction. So therefore the programming is, okay, you are, you know, actually, you know, not well. When in actual fact, actually you are well. Your body is trying to send you a message, and it's trying to help you to actually heal and come into balance. And the symptoms are showing up because something might not have been processed or released in the past, and the body's the final frontier for carrying the energy of you know, something that needs to be looked at that got missed. You know, and so it's actually a blessing when our bodies produce symptoms. It's a blessing when we go through adversity, because our life and our bodies are giving us messages that we need to grow and to progress and to transform. But we end up giving our power away to pharmaceutical companies and the medical industries, and we keep voting these people into power. And then, you know, we just see that we have a very unhealthy society. Our elders end up with Alzheimer's and in nursing homes, you know, instead of like indigenous cultures where, you know, they're counted upon for wisdom. And you know, we're you know, drugged, or we're taking some sort of medication to cope with a system that's, you know, not healthy for us. And our body, you know, is a great guide. And, you know, I've always allowed the symptoms that show up in my body to help me to heal, instead of, you know, the other way around, where, you know, I'm just going to run off and freak out and have a doctor tell me what's wrong. It's like I allow myself to go on an inner journey to identify, why is this showing up and where is this coming from? You know, I'm not saying that I've, you know, have been able to avoid doctors completely and totally, or I'm not trying to tell people that's so silly that you're going to doctors or you shouldn't go at all. It's just, what I'm encouraging is, you know, take it upon yourself to truly understand the nature of why this is showing up and what it's rooted in. And, you know, it's an opportunity to truly get to know yourself. Anytime we have physical symptoms, it's an opportunity for us to know ourselves better and to love ourselves more fully and to be, you know, healthier. But the programming, you know, takes us into a completely different direction. And then that dependency of the system and just the drugs and the doctors, you know, pull us even further away from ourselves. And it doesn't enable, like, nature to do its magic, because we're actually going against it and saying something's wrong here. And so we're counting on humans and whatever educational system they went through, which doesn't always consider the soul and the whole person. But thank God there's, you know, so much about, you know, holistic healing now, and nutrition and energy work, and, you know, but, you know, even the New Age stuff in teachings and healings, you know, sometimes have distortions we have to watch out for. So, you know, we always need to focus on the inner work, because that will really help us with discernment about the choices we're making when it comes to how we progress on our paths. We will need, you know, the more we can know ourselves, at least, you know, we can know, is this right for us or is it not right for us?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because no matter what the New Age or doctor or holistic practitioner or whatever they say, you know what your body's saying more than anybody. And if you pay attention to what it's saying, it's going to say, go do this or go do that. I've actually been sick with the flu and had all the symptoms of the flu, and I just got up. Something told me to get up, take my dog, and go to the park and walk around and just breathe. And when I came back, my symptoms were lessened more than sitting in the house and breathing in artificial air, you know, through the air conditioner and stuff. And I just got out in the nature, and I went, you know, and I felt tremendously better, and by the next day I was fine. So
right, and we have that internal, totally, and we have that all built into us internally, but we're so conditioned to ignore our inner voice, or to think it's nonsense, and just to go for what somebody else says we should be doing. And how do they know? They don't know us. I mean, they're not us. And there's just this, it's disconnected from ourselves as we are from nature. I'm not saying everybody. I mean, a lot of us that, are the audience, and, you and me, I mean, it's not quite like that for us. But, the masses, I mean, that's what's happened. And it's, we have,
Laura, are you still there? Hello?
Oh, I'm sorry about that. I think hello?
Yeah,
hello?
I hear you now. Yeah, you're fine.
Yeah, I was just saying, we have it all built into us, and this is just an incredible window period right now, because there's a lot more that's available to people, because you can Google it online, or you can reach out to, different, movements and communities where people are, doing their best to make the world a better place. And, but like everything that we do in the external should be matched by, a lot of inner work, and, people are like, well, how do I start? What is inner work? What does that mean? Well, it might be keeping a journal, it might be doing art, and, doing things where you can get to know yourself more, and not having judgment about it. Sometimes we might write a lot of really dark things. Well, good. It needs to be purged. And the thing is, we can identify the things that need to be cleared and cleaned in our physical environment, because it's obvious to our eyes. We know, when we eat something bad, the body rejects it. But when it comes to our mental bodies and emotional bodies, it's a little bit more difficult, and we're a little bit desensitized, and I think people think it's okay and normal to walk around feeling depressed or heavy or in a low energy, or, frustrated or bitter or resentful. But we don't realize, okay, those are like dishes that need to be cleaned. That's like, something that needs to be flushed. I mean, that needs to be cleared, to lighten the load. And, it's energy maintenance. Deep down underneath it all, we're very enlightened, and we're very aware, and we've got everything we need, and everybody's got this. But the problem is more about what we allow to accumulate and what we allow to build up, and how we don't, take the initiative to do something about it in the same way we would with our physical environment. Well, of course, there are some people that don't, do anything about their physical environment, and allow it to get really messy. No judgment on that. I've been there. I still have my issues with it. But I'm so geared towards, keeping the rest of me okay, that sometimes my physical is, the one that I need to make sure I address. It's all about balance, so that we can take care of the mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical. And sometimes, we're better at one than the other, but we got to address all of it, and recognize that, when we are able to do that, we have access to our inner wisdom and our healing powers and abilities. And that reminds us, hey, it's not something we have to attain by seeking it outside of ourselves. It's something that we have to allow in our lives by creating the right space for it, by addressing all the things that need to be balanced or cleared or purified. And, a great way to do it is just to, release, and like through creativity and through, speaking our truth, and, maybe bringing more words to the things that we're internalizing, that we're afraid to share, and turning it into an art form. It's like the most beautiful music and poems come from a very, troubled person at times, but that's therapy, for the person, and it's inspiring for the people who read it, because it gives them more permission to be real with themselves, and then, we'll always access our light. Just because we're in a dark place doesn't mean the light's gone for good. Just because it's nighttime doesn't mean the sun's not going to come up.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm all about embracing all aspects. Yeah.
I agree with you. I 100% agree with you, because I find that I hear people talking about, I want to avoid these emotions, or, I don't want to feel like this anymore. And I'm like, well, you have to face that. You have to embrace that aspect of yourself. Those emotions were put there for a reason. So,
right.
You can't
if they
avoid
want to, totally.
Go ahead.
And what ends up happening is...
Go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was just giving an example. Like, somebody, I work with a lot of people with grief, And of course with grief, people want to, the loss of a loved one or whatever, they want to just brush that under the rug, and you can't. Sometimes, it comes out in stages, but when it comes up, you have to face it, and so it's because things hurt, and we don't want to feel pain, but truly we have to go through it in order to face ourselves and love ourselves.
Definitely. And, we can always, recognize that and say, okay, maybe I can't do it while I'm at work, but maybe, this evening I can create a nice space for myself and give myself permission to really feel into it, And, some people, even mourn for longer than maybe is healthy and end up, really sad, and they can't get over, an ex or somebody passing away. And that's where a person really needs to have faith in what's in front of them, that there's always, like creation never stops. And just because we can't see, somebody doesn't mean we're not totally connected. And, the conditions on this planet are going to change, and we're going to be recognizing of, we're going to have more recognition of our multidimensional body. And the veil between life and death eventually will be lifted. And the thing is, whatever we choose to avoid, ends up, we transfer it into an addiction, It's like you can't bury it and expect that you're going to be a healthy person. I mean, very often, people, end up locked in, addiction or drinking or, food addictions and cigarettes. And it's like, that's to appease the thing that they're trying to hold on to, to keep it down, and to appease the self in some other way. But when you face it and release it, you have access to natural bliss, and it's much more comfortable, and you don't have to, find a substance to provide it for you while you're, running away from yourself. I mean, some substances that will take you right into yourself, like plant medicines, like ayahuasca, I'm not quite referring to that. I mean, that's completely different. That can be, very healthy. I just, if a person's called to it, that's awesome. If they're not called to it, pay attention to that because, really trust yourself and your intuition. There's no right way or wrong way to be. The best way to be is, really good to yourself and honoring of what your boundaries are and also, what you feel inspired to experiment with. But, just exercising that muscle of discernment is also good because, sometimes we get a little hasty and overexcited. But we have to fall on our face and get back up again. So, there's the importance of that. I mean, no matter how much advice we hear, it's like, we have to, go through it ourselves. But, maybe the advice will come up later like, oh, okay, now I see what she was talking about or I see what he was talking about. But, I mean, life is an experiment. We have to see for ourselves for it to really, be integrated. But we want to protect ourselves, from not having it, compromise us too much either. And that's why, sometimes it's good to, really make sure we educate ourselves about, as much as possible, before we partake in anything. Life is just this complex thing, and balance is just, wow, when we think of all the different things we, have to balance, it's incredible. And it's always something we have to revisit because, just like making a meal, it's like, every time we do something creative, we throw things a little bit out of balance, but it's all about, balance, imbalance, and the return to balance. We make a meal, we have to clean up after ourselves, and so it's not the most balanced environment, but the whole idea is that we restore balance, and it's completed when, the kitchen's clean, and then we wake up and we do it all over again. So, we're going to have this ebb and flow of, being balanced and then losing it for a little bit, but it's because we're pushing the envelope and we're being creative, and then we'll rebalance, and then we'll, create something new. And, I mean, that's a different form of imbalance, but the whole thing is understanding that there's nothing wrong with having things not be exactly where they should be at all times, because creativity has a byproduct that needs to be addressed. Things need to be composted. Things get, put back in the fridge. And I've been using this analogy a lot, and I hope anybody who's listening is not like, oh, okay, you said this last time. But, it's just a part of, like, understanding, we're moving forward, and we're creative, and we're leaving something behind as we do that we need to, make sure is being addressed, It's like, let's make sure that it's thrown away. Let's make sure the dishes are clean so that germs and parasites don't come, because this is what's happening in our world, or what has happened in our world. When we don't address the imbalance, we end up, being invaded by parasitic forces, and that's what our control system is. When the masculine and feminine were differentiated enough, and the negative ego got in there, this imbalance got created, and we allowed it to persist because we forgot to return to ourselves. and the manipulations and the, technologies out there have made it very difficult to know how to do that. But, if we want to learn about, consciousness or how to find balance or how to work with creative energy, just look at your life. In any given day, we're seeing the exact same laws and the exact same things that apply to what's happening in the larger picture. If we're out of balance in ourselves, we tend to have arguments. We tend to have issues with our loved ones. We tend to see things fall apart. We tend to, so all I'm saying is we can learn everything we need to learn by just observing our own life and the way everything, functions, and it can help to make the larger picture make sense and gives us clues about how we can heal the larger picture stuff by addressing things more personally.
You brought up the divine feminine a little bit ago and how we've basically tried to hide that and mask it and, basically cut it out of the world altogether. And I've been I mentioned you on an email a couple weeks ago. I've been reading this book, and I'm getting ready to interview her, Tricia McCannon, in a couple weeks. And I didn't even realize, I guess I did on some level, that we've been trying to cut it out like way before even Constantine. It's been going on for eons, or at least, back to the end. She brings up the Yahweh writers of the Bible and the Elohim writers of the Bible. I didn't even realize it went back that far. Of us trying to exclude the divine feminine completely and oppress that part of ourselves that's very, very important in our lives. And so it just made me realize that the oppression has gone on for a tremendously long time, that I don't even think most of us out there listening to the show, or a good majority of us out there listening to the show, even know. And so I think it's refreshing that now we're bringing this forward and talking about it and saying, listen, this is a whole part of yourself that you're missing, and it's time to recognize that.
Yeah, it's very old. Even from the time the Lemurian Holocaust happened. I mean, from the time that even Lucifer rebelled. And I'm not saying that it's all about him and he's the bad guy. I mean, this is a part of our soul architecture where we inherited all these creator forces, and we need to resolve them within ourselves. And, the patriarchal male energy comes from more than one male archetype. And
right.
The only male archetype that really gets it is the Christ consciousness. And so when the masculine and feminine are in balance, it births the Christ consciousness, and then it kind of repartners itself, with that consciousness, and like identifies with it. I mean, it's kind of like, the way creativity happens and the way cells and DNA keep replicating, in the sense of where our divine blueprint is at. But when we're functioning off of programmings, we keep, the negative ego alive, we keep the imbalance alive, and that's what's created so much confusion, in this feminist movement where women want to fight in wars and they want to, have equal rights, which is important, absolutely. But, men and women, no matter what our gender is, I mean, we need to embrace the divine masculine and feminine and stop trying to show up for something, to fit a role that was constructed from the artificial matrix to begin with. It's like, why do any of us want to fight in a war? I mean, let's look at the nature of what war is. Let's look at, this planetary body. Let's look at nature. Let's look at the web of life and start to learn from that and start to show up for that instead of the matrix stuff where we're trying to prove something within the matrix that's already corrupt. Because the movements that are created are just as out of whack as the very problem that created the necessity for it. So I think if we step back from all of it and just say, hey, let's just look at ourselves and the truth of what we're made of and start a whole new paradigm, then we don't have to try and fight for something, and prove something or fight for our rights, even though that's important to stand up for those things, for the masses to not allow this stuff to persist. We also, need to open that door out of the matrix and look at, what we're really made of and what's always available, and I think, we have to go back and forth a little bit, to enlighten the people in the matrix and to step out of it and take a deep breath to make sure that we're not getting lost in, what they expect, just like they expected, the Occupy movement and, protesting to happen, that also leads us right into martial law and, the police state. So, and the control the collapse of the economy, we might look at it as this great breakthrough, but it might mean that we're going to get chipped now. So, if we're trying to fight and solve things within a system that has a way to kind of catch it and steer it again into a new trap. I think it's time that we recognize this and we step away from all of it completely and totally and recognize the energies of both the divine masculine and feminine by, spending more time in nature and answering to nature instead of government and instead of, trying to enlighten a system that's designed to keep us locked in this loop, that makes us think like we're, making huge strides when in actual fact we're just entering a whole new, issue. And I don't think that we need to stop completely and totally doing that just because we don't want to allow, the imbalance to persist without, saying something, but I mean, it's all been set up that we'd have a black president and somebody like Hillary Clinton running for president, but they're still a part of the Illuminati and they're still a part of, all this different stuff, and I'm not, I think Obama is very compromised. On some level, I think, there's goodness in him. Hillary, I think, is really far gone. But I don't even care to report on these people. I'm just, wanting people to understand Kathy O'Brien's story. That's the only reason I talk about Hillary Clinton. It's like before you go vote, you might want to read this book. But what I'm really, interested in is, we need to answer to nature. We're guardians of nature and Gaia, and we need to unplug from the matrix and be on this path of ascension. And once we're in that vibration, then if we go back into the matrix, at least we're really representing something a lot greater than getting locked in the power struggle that they want us to be locked in, so that we're chasing our tail, and we never really are able to ascend because we're trying to solve one problem after another, and it's designed to do that. Do you get what I'm saying? You know what I mean?
As long as you're fighting. As long as we're fighting amongst each other, we can never become aware. And once one group that considers themselves to be enlightened or whatever, and they overthrow another group, then they become the new tyrant, and then they become the oppressors, and then none of them are ever in their heart. So if we operate with nature in our heart and listen to that, then we're always going to be in flow. And
right, and then when we go into the matrix stuff and we represent this, and we are the examples, then it inspires people to say, wait a second, why would I want to vote these people into office when there's all these people that are really representing something much more, genuine and much more organic and much more, realistic. And that person's got receptors in their body that are going to, be able to, get a big activation from it. And that's exactly what we're doing. People like you and me and a lot of others, we step out of the matrix enough to, really understand, what's real and what's genuine and what's available. And in a sense, being, putting ourselves out there for, people to connect with. Yeah, we're kind of back in the matrix. I live in a neighborhood. I got a smart meter. I'm not exactly off the grid and living like, the way that I'd love to, but, I'm still representing all of that, even though I'm still in this. And it's kind of like, kind of guides people out of it, instead of, trying to fight for, something within this structure, and staying stuck in it, and I just love that, this is growing because, it is a huge, transformation. And that's why I call myself a global alchemist. And I used to use the word global transformation all the time because, it's an inner soul process, but it connects with the world soul, and it connects with, kind of like creating a huge exorcism. And when we restore the balance, none of these things can persist on the planet. It's just if we don't rally the troops, and if we don't get humanity's attention, it's going to be very difficult. But, I think we're doing as good as anybody could in this situation. This is one of the darkest and most difficult planets to be on, but it's got one of the greatest potentials. So, and the beauty is that our chakras and our DNA are linked to the planet and to the stargates. So we will feel, something way off if we don't start to wake up. Or, we're going to start to lose our soul and we're not even going to know the difference. And I think too many people, who have been in the matrix programming have huge hearts and have deep souls. They just haven't really known the game being played, and they're going to be fine because their heart energy and their soul energy is going to, wake them up just in the nick of time compared to somebody who's really shut down and who's just very unconscious and who's in a very low vibration, like a bully or somebody who's, lost in, the media distortions and the, I mean, somebody who's raising their family, who has a huge heart, who's good to their spouse, who cares about their kids, who's lost in the matrix programming, stands a much better chance than somebody who's in the matrix, who's just maybe lost in the negative ego stuff and is treating people bad and is cheating on their wife or, doesn't care about their kids. The heart energy is going to, carry, those souls through. It's going to carry those souls to where they need to be, even if they don't understand the conspiracy stuff. So at the end of the day, that's the most important thing is to, really stay connected to the heart and soul. And like we said before, and then naturally we start to wake up to the game. But, the masses are going to, I really think, that the majority of people are going to be fine, because I think the majority of people are very good-natured. And maybe some people wouldn't agree with me. I mean, sometimes I wonder if that's even true, but I really do, feel it, that deep down, people, we all want the same thing. We want happy relationships. We want our children to be okay. We want, our needs to be met. We want to have a beautiful planet. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very true. We all want the same things. It's interesting too, because you can actually see their hearts. You can see their light shine in their eyes, and then you can also see a part of the program when something hits them emotionally, and you can see their energy shift. And I can actually see I call it their beast comes out just for a second, like their face shifts, and you're like, first time I saw it, I was like, oh. Wow, what was that?
And it's like, lost you for a second.
Yeah, lost you for a second. And you're like, and so when you see that, I have just learned to realize, they just had a moment, and but there's still this beautiful person in there that's beyond that, whatever it is, that's going on inside of that emotion or that anger or that anxiety or whatever is going on inside of them. And I think that's one of the things you teach is that there's a group of energies that literally want us to be there because they feed off of our fear. And I believe I always mispronounce their name, the Archon energy. And they actually feed off of our fear, and they want us there. But when we're in our hearts, they can't feed off of that. So. Right,
totally. And that's so interesting too when we see somebody shift like that. I mean, I think we can all say we've had relationships where, oh my God, we're so in love, everything was great, and then all of a sudden, like, oh my God, they got overtaken and possessed, or, my parents, they had glimpses of understanding me, and then, oh my God, then they got lost again and all that stuff. And I think, our job right now is to really hold space for the goodness that we see and to not battle the programming, or to judge it too much, or to, get entangled in that person's programming when we notice that it shows up. But to really hold space for that heart and soul to emerge again by maybe just saying something encouraging like, you don't seem like yourself, like I really miss that, that sparkle in your eye. You seem so angry, and just something that, empowers that part of them instead of like, how could you do that to me? I can't believe you. It's like, okay, now we're in battle again. I mean, there's no way to really just map it all out. I think we can do the best we can, but I love what you just said, though. I mean, just the sparkle in somebody's eye and just knowing that, there is so much beauty underneath it all and such goodness. And, when that trigger does come where they're back in that programming, now all of a sudden they're feeding the archons again. And then, they jump back and now they're, feeding the unity and the harmony and the good stuff. And I think as long as they at least identify with the heart and soul, enough, it's going to win, because the other stuff expires. I think, people will tend to take the higher road, just like, when we're sick, who's going to win, the disease or the immune system? Well, a lot of the time the immune system does. You have to really give up to have disease win. And so a person has to really give up on their heart and soul to allow the programmings to win. And I don't think people are willing to give that stuff up, because we're too much, like I said, like, in the wilderness, the will to survive and thrive is a lot stronger than the will to be overtaken completely.
Yeah, absolutely. So we got a few more minutes, and I just wanted to ask you a question. I've noticed that you guys, you and Dr. Dream have something called a Dream Team session. What is? I just had a question about what that was, and what else.
Well, when we're together, we combine, what we do. I do astrology, tarot, and clairvoyant readings, and I do it mostly over the phone. And he does, energetic experiences for people with essential oils and tuning forks and crystal bowls and Tibetan bowls, and really takes people into a process that helps to shift their energy. So, and he also does consultations, and I also do, work with, tools and modalities. I used to do a lot more of that. But when we put our, energies together, it's like, wow, we can, do both at the same time, where I, do the astrology and tarot or the clairvoyant stuff, and then, he helps, bring a person into the vibration of, their highest potential, while also assisting them in releasing the stuff that I'm bringing up, that might need to be released, some foreign energy or programmings that might have gotten into their space. So it just really enhances the experience. We love doing them. People have, just such a great, experience with it. And I'm meeting up with him. I'll be in Portland this weekend, and we are offering, to do our Dream Team sessions. And then when we get a chance to travel more together, anytime we're together, that's always on offer. And you can go and check out our website, dreamteamsessions.com, to, find out more.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. So you'll be in Portland this weekend. So whoever's in the Portland area, definitely find out where she's going to be at. I'm sure it's on your website here at Cosmic Gaia Sophia, where they can find out where you're going to be at. And what is going on? What do you have going on after that? Just because we just got another minute or so. You have Portland, and then where are you going?
I don't know if every... So after that, I have an event in Los Angeles, May 16th, from 11 to 6 p.m., and I will be presenting with Sean Stone and Dean Ryan and Sharon, I'm so sorry, what's her last name again? She's an amazing activist, Sharon Schloss. And then after that, we have Contact in the Desert, and a bunch of other things. So check out my website, but those are the two things I have after Portland. Contact in the Desert is May 29th to 31st in Joshua Tree.
Wonderful. Well, Laura, it's always been a pleasure, and thank you so much for coming on the show this evening, and I'm sure we'll have you on later on, and have safe journeys this weekend.
Thank you so much for having me on. I always love chatting with you, and definitely look forward to connecting more soon, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. And everybody have a wonderful evening, and Laura, and many blessings. Bye-bye.